I'm Brianne Boswell, and in this Peace of Mind Roundtable talk, I sit down with men throughout our community to talk about the mental health struggles they face. For more information on the Peace of Mind Project and additional resources, visit the Peace of Mind page on 14news.com.
At Toyota Indiana, we believe an auto company can be a vehicle for change. Mental health awareness is an important part of our commitment to the well-being of every team member. That's why at Toyota Indiana, we are proud to be a partner of the 14 News Peace of Mind Project.
Thanks for joining us today for this Peace of Mind Roundtable talk. I'm Brianne Boswell. We have some new faces with us today that I would like to introduce you to. Sam Preston over here is the Public Safety Director, Interim Public Safety Director at the University of Southern Indiana. Andrew Martin is a local therapist at Trinity Counseling. Mario Reed is the Mental Health and Homeless Liaison for the Evansville Police Department. And Michelle Nobles, a familiar face, is with RVBH, our Peace of Mind partner. Thank you guys so much for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
us.
So today we're doing something a little bit unique. The Peace of Mind Project Roundtable Talks are simply a way that we all at 14 News can create conversations about mental health topics that are impacting our communities. Today's talk is going to focus on men and mental health and the different challenges that they face, as well as the importance of getting help. It's certainly unique, but definitely important that everyone can hopefully get something out of this today. So Sam, I'll start with you this afternoon. Is mental health something that is difficult for men to discuss, and why is that?
I think it definitely is for a couple reasons. One is, some of the stigma that we've had, the societal norms over the years is mental health is something we don't talk about. I think some of our movies and some of the things that we watch, it portrays masculinity and mental toughness as being the same, and that's not always the case. It's the fact that mental health is very unique, and I think it's also hard for men sometimes to be as verbal to disclose feelings. So those are a couple of reasons.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's suppressed, I feel like, for men especially. Andrew, are there elements of anxiety and depression that are more specific to men?
Absolutely. I think oftentimes when we look at depression, we think about that in terms of like overwhelming sense of sadness and grief and feeling, just kind of really downtrodden, which men experience that as well. But a lot of times, even with anxiety, we see that more as anger or irritability, more so than necessarily always just sadness. I get a lot of men that come into my office, and the main thing they want to talk about is, I'm feeling very angry right now. Maybe it's an issue that they're having in their relationship, maybe it's something that's happening at work. And the more that we kind of start to dig into that a little bit, we actually find there are traces or elements more of being depressed or being anxious, that there's actually something a lot more deeper going on. Kind of what Sam was just talking about. As men, I think we don't talk about our feelings a lot. We don't hear about expressing emotion very well, and so a lot of times that just gets funneled all through anger, because anger to men seems to be more acceptable than feeling very sad or feeling very scared. It's a lot easier to just come across and to be outwardly sort of pushing people away or sort of fighting against that quite a bit. So I definitely see that a lot. We also see where guys can kind of tend to just kind of shy away a little bit more. They just want to be quiet. They just want to kind of sink back into themselves a little bit. And so sometimes it kind of goes unnoticed or kind of gets mistaken for something else.
Absolutely. Mario, the CDC says, I looked it up online, that men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women. Why do you think that is?
Well, the research shows that men are more likely to use more lethal means, and that's usually something that's going to be more violent or aggressive. A lot of times is a firearm of some kind, and that has put them in a situation that they are more likely to die because of that more lethal or more violent means. And so when thinking about the concept of suicide and the lethality, especially for men, is not looking at the instrument or the tool or the weapon, but looking at partnering with that individual to help keep them safe. And so some of the things that as we do in our approach, and I know that individuals in the mental health field do as well, is working with those individuals to plan for keeping them safe. For example, if someone does experience suicidality, coming up with some safety plan they can do, maybe putting ammunition in a different part of the home, locking guns up at different times, maybe having one of the things that I learned a long time ago when Sam Preston was my crisis intervention teacher was when you go out and work with individuals who are having these concerns, especially males that own firearms, is have them put a picture of someone that's important to them on their gun safe or something like that, and coming up with ways that they can develop better coping skills to help them when they are having these suicidal idealities in some of those situations.
Yeah, those are some unique perspectives for sure. Michelle, how can we destigmatize men that are in need of mental health help?
I think we've come a really long way, but we definitely have a long way to go. And one thing that I think we need to recognize is that if I were sitting at home with a medical condition and I knew that there was a professional out there that specialized in treating that medical condition, I would probably likely go and seek help from that professional. And we need to look at mental health the exact same way. Mental health needs to be treated as health, as part of our overall well-being and recovery, just like we treat medical illnesses that way. So if I'm sitting at home with a mental illness or mental health symptoms, and there's someone out there or a resource out there that can help me or help me to treat that condition, I need to feel that it's okay to reach out and utilize those resources. And so I think until we reach that point that we start treating those things equally, that's when we're really going to start to see a reduction in that stigmatization of mental illness.
Are there things throughout the tri-state that are catered more toward men in mental health?
I don't know of any specifically. Do you guys know of any specifically targeted to men?
No.
Okay.
Think of anything.
Maybe that's something
Where you just found the need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Marianne.
Just saying.
I think one of the things that have been done is now that we're aware of some of the data, I think treatment and programs and initiatives are gearing towards that. Not something directly targeted for that, but now that we're aware of the problem, we have started to work through that. That's even like, when I give an example from even in the last 10 years of working as a crisis intervention officer, from the time that like when I took a class from Sam Preston, like we were taught some of these things that they were talking about 5 and 10 years
Yeah.
ago. So
There's definitely been progress, for sure. Sam, statistically speaking, gun violence is more prevalent amongst men. How much of that has to do with mental health?
Well, I think obviously, men generally do more outdoor things that involve hunting, and sometimes that familiarity with weapons make suicide maybe more prevalent, that comfortability. And one of the things that we see that we need to do is oftentimes work on safety planning for someone who's going through a crisis. A lot of people use our recreational, they're hunters, they're target shooters, they're skeet shooters, and that's something they use as a coping mechanism. But in a time of crisis, maybe they don't need that weapon at that time. Mario mentioned some things that you can do sometimes to maybe reduce that spontaneity if someone's in crisis. Another thing that we've said, and I think the terminology is important, is when someone hears that they should have their guns taken away, sometimes that causes more anxiety, more aggression. But it's not about maybe taking guns away, but can someone during crisis, is there someone that can babysit those weapons for a couple of days, a few weeks, until that crisis subsides? So I think that's some of the tools that we can do to keep people safe for now, and help mitigate weapons in our society used on someone, on themselves.
Yeah, for sure. We've been talking about how men are less prevalent to come out and just talk about how they're feeling, right? So Andrew, how do we know that friends or family in our lives that are men are struggling? And how do you approach that conversation with them to ask?
I think one thing that always comes to mind is that we look at what is someone's pattern, what is their behavior. Over time, actually, family and friends are really the first line of defense in working with people with mental health. They're the people who see them day in and day out. They're going to start to notice the patterns. They're going to start to notice when something seems off just a little bit. The one thing that we kind of keep in mind is that as men, we kind of tend to want to internally process things a lot. So we kind of have to take out of this that it's going to be a one-time conversation, that it may be multiple conversations. It may be mentioning something to them and then giving some time for them to kind of think about that, process that, maybe talk to other men or other people in their lives about that. The other thing I think that we have to keep in mind too is when we see someone that's struggling, just going out and spending time with them, just doing something, as men, we typically don't want to sit down face to face, like I said, and talk about our feelings. But if we can invite somebody over to, say, work on a project, or going hunting or fishing or playing golf, or having something that we're doing together, where it provides those opportunities for those conversations to happen. I think sometimes too, when those conversations do happen, it can sometimes be helpful for men that are wanting to help the others to speak out with a bit of their own vulnerability. As a man, sometimes when I'm talking to somebody else and I can mention struggles that I have as a parent, or struggles that I have myself with fears or anxieties, worries, it kind of lessens that a little bit, where then other people are more likely to want to hear that. It kind of, like the question about, how do we destigmatize it, I think also is to make it more normal what we feel, and then that just because we're feeling something doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a crisis. It doesn't necessarily mean that we always need mental intervention or help in that way, but at least it kind of starts that conversation, with that front line of people in our lives.
Right. Mario, we talked about how we can't think of any mental health resources throughout the tri-state directly for men, but maybe there's someone watching this who is looking for a resource. What can we tell them about right now to get into their hands some help if they need it?
So I will first start by parroting what Mr. Martin said. First is foremost, talk to someone, whether it's family members, friends. The other thing is, when we start looking at mental illness, mental health as a whole, and as the body, or a holistic approach to health, then we can start talking about getting those resources in place. But a lot of the resources can start with your primary care physician. They can start with seeking out therapy services through a number of the organizations that provide private and public access for therapy. We've got the Southwestern Behavioral Health Crisis Line. They have, you can dial 988. That is going to work just like 911. If someone is in crisis, they can dial 988. They will talk to someone that's there 24 hours a day at any time. They can help walk people through those things. Some of those things that we're talking about with safety planning, things like that, they can do over the phone. Also, there is the 422-1100, and that's actually a local number that goes directly to Southwestern Behavioral Health Crisis Services, where they have someone on the phone that can talk someone through a crisis situation. Not only that, can also provide mobile field response to those individuals, and then also can help connect them with other services in the community. And of course, our hospital systems, we've got Brentwood out in Ward County, we've got Deaconess and Ascension St. Vincent. They all have behavioral health programming and clinicians and different things that are available to serve anyone in the tri-state, whether male, female, or anyone that needs those services. So a lot of times it's just starting with family, friends, and then a lot of times it's just having a conversation with your doctor.
I've talked to a lot of men and women, and sometimes when they're afraid to admit it because they don't want to get locked up somewhere for an extended period of time. But that's not where it starts. It starts small.
So I would say I'm a person that has had some situations with mental illness. There's actually a lot of law enforcement officers or first responders that have had PTSD, anxiety, depression, even suicidality. But when they were able to get that treatment and to get that care, just like someone that has cancer, we won't go to someone and say, because you have cancer, you can't do something, or we're going to lock you up because you have that. When you're seeking treatment and you're actively engaged in that treatment, then that means that you're on that road to being where you need to be. And that's really comes down to, if we're safe, then you can be safe and in recovery at the same time. And safe and recovery actually should be synonymous.
Absolutely. I'll ask all of the men here with us, what are some consequences of men not seeking mental health help when they really need it?
I'll start off as, I think Michelle said this, mental health and health in general isn't two separate things. It's all encompassing. So obviously it can affect your the physical side, whether it be high blood pressure, could it be onset to diabetes. Obviously, you could see coping skills deteriorate, it could lead to problems with your work, with your family. So it really touches every part of your life. So I think the approach to helping fix that is also try to touch every part of your life and have a holistic approach to navigate, to just navigating life in general.
Yeah, for sure. Some great tips. Anyone else?
I think a lot of times men can really suffer in silence. That they don't talk about it. They try to keep it under wraps. Also kind of seeking out other solutions, other ways in which they can deal with this. That could be self-medicating with alcohol or drugs. It can be diving into other sorts of activities, can be diving into like video games or gambling or other kind of risky kind of behavior, because there might be a hole within them that they're trying to fill, or that an area that needs to be helped, but it's not. And we find all these other things that then kind of create these secondary problems for people, when in reality, if we could kind of get a handle a little bit more on those underlying mental health things, it would really help alleviate some of those other problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle, I'll ask you, as a woman, how can we support the men in our life that might be struggling?
Well, I think being willing to ask the questions, just because they're not willing to talk about it doesn't mean that we shouldn't ask, and continue to ask. If we see that someone is struggling and we identify some of those signs, that someone might be, like what was talked about earlier, where the anger may come out a little more prevalently than the traditional symptoms of anxiety and depression that we might see. If we see those changes in the men in our lives, then I think it's important that we're asking the questions, is there something that might be going on with you that you want to talk about? Are you having thoughts of suicide? And being very open and honest and transparent and asking those questions, so that it lets them know that you're willing to open the door to that conversation and receive whatever response they might give you.
Does that make sense, men?
Absolutely.
What she said. So that means when we ask about something, they answer, right? That's how it works. So. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us today to discuss men and mental health, this very important topic. We definitely appreciate the information you brought to the table to discuss men and mental health. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health challenge, scan the QR code on your screen. You'll be taken to the Peace of Mind page on 14news.com, where you will find resources to get help.
At Old National Bank, we're proud to be involved in the communities we serve. Mental health awareness and well-being is an important part of our commitment to those in the community. That's why at Old National Bank, we are proud to be a partner of the 14 News Peace of Mind Project.